I grow hundreds of cloves of garlic every single year in my backyard garden, and I'm going to tell you everything I know about growing garlic. This is my ultimate garlic growing guide. So even if you have planted garlic before, maybe you already have it in the ground, there's going to be some good information for you. And if you haven't planted garlic yet, there still may be time. I'm going to cover what type of garlic to be planting, where to get it from, when to plant, when to know it's ready to harvest, how to cure it, how to store it to ensure that you have fresh homegrown garlic 365 days a year. Today's the day where I'm planting my garden, and I'm planting both hardneck and softneck variety. But it may not be good for you to grow one or the other depending on where you live. So let me explain the two first. Starting off with hardneck, or sometimes called stiffneck garlic. This garlic is going to be better for people who are in colder regions. It's going to make a bigger bulb with fewer cloves, but at the same time, it is going to not store as well. It will produce a scape, so it's something that you have to cut off to add energy into that bulb, but that scape is something that you can eat, so you get a delicious crop before you're ready to harvest your garlic. Now your soft neck garlic, now that has a soft neck. If you've ever seen those garlic braids, I have one hanging in my kitchen right now. That is a soft neck garlic. Soft neck garlic is going to be better at storing. It's a little bit more mild than a hard neck garlic. There are more cloves within a bulb, but it is a great one if you are in a warmer climate. Now I am growing 5 different types of garlic, or different varieties, only growing one softneck. It does okay, but in Kentucky, I'm kind of in that in-between zone. So I've had better success with a hardneck garlic. So I'm going to be growing some hardneck garlic that I've grown in the past, and a few new varieties. And where should you get your garlic from if you're going to be growing garlic? Well, you have a few options. This garlic right here was seed garlic that I purchased online. Usually the good stuff sells out soon, so you may not be able to buy it if you're planting later in the year. But another good source is to go to your local farmer's market. That's going to be great because that garlic was grown in your area, so you're going to have a better chance of success. You may also reach out if you're in any gardening groups to see if anybody has some extra garlic. And then the best thing is garlic that you planted last year that you saved, that you are starting to acclimate that garlic to your property, your own unique conditions, saving the best bulbs every year to plant, so your garlic year after year gets better. Now you may be tempted to get garlic from the grocery store, but I would caution against that. One, it could contain disease. They could be brought over from China, where a lot of it is grown. It also is probably not going to be the right type for you, or may not be the right type for you. The garlic that is grown that you usually see in the grocery stores, a lot of it is grown from China, some of it out in California, but it's going to be more of a Mediterranean climate. And for me, that's just not going to work because I have hot, wet summers and springs. So pick a garlic that is going to be best for your area. Yeah, you can throw some in the ground, but you always run the risk of introducing disease that could persist for a very long time. Okay, now that you have your garlic in hand, when do you plant it? Well, you don't want to plant it too soon because it can emerge, and then the cold will stress that garlic out and you'll have a smaller bulb overall. So you do not want too much above ground growth before it gets really cold. But also you don't want to wait too late because one, the ground is hard and difficult to work, but also you could stress out the bulb as well and have a smaller bulb. So you got to find the right window, and that's going to vary depending on where you are. So I would recommend looking out to your local extension agent to see, look online for your area, your zone. But the best information is going to come from growers in your area. Connect with someone who's already growing garlic. If I looked online, it would say that I should already have my garlic in the ground. I don't, because I am listening to an experienced gardener who grows over 6,000 cloves of garlic every single year, and he lives in my area. He doesn't start planting until the middle of November and goes through mid-December. And I've followed his advice every single year, and it's worked out great. So I can't actually tell you the best time for you to plant garlic. It's going to be after it gets cold and before you start having regular hard freezes. Now yesterday I prepped this bed for planting garlic. It is in a full sun location, it is well drained. My pH is a little higher than 7, which is not ideal, but I've been slowly bringing that down. An ideal pH would be between 6 and 7. The area doesn't stay constantly wet, and I didn't grow garlic here previously. I had peppers, which I pulled up. Usually I would leave the roots of my plants in the ground, but for garlic, I wanted that soil nice and loose. Once I had the peppers out, I added 3 inches of compost across the bed. So I would recommend the same, 2 to 3 inches of compost. And then I added phosphorus in the form of bone meal. You want phosphorus because phosphorus helps root development, and that's what we're going for right now in the winter. Now you should add that at a rate of 2 to 3 pounds per 100 square foot. For me, that translated to being 3 to 4 cups in my row that is 2.5 feet wide and 30 feet long. If you've got a 4 by 8 raised bed, that would be 32 square feet and about 1.25 to 2 cups of bone meal. I mixed that in lightly on the top of the soil, and it was good to go. Now, why didn't I add any nitrogen when prepping the soil? Because that's pretty important for growing plants. Well, that's because excess nitrogen in the fall produces too much leafy growth. The leaves become frost damaged, which you get weaker plants in the spring. It delays the dormancy and increases winter kill risk. So hold off on the nitrogen until the spring. And now to planting. When you plant garlic, you break apart the bulb. I already did that. I did that earlier this morning. You do not want to do that well in advance because it'll start to dry out. So I did it, just today. So don't do it really more than like a day ahead of time. Ideally right before you're going to plant. And when I was separating the bulbs, I pulled out any cloves that were undersized or starting to rot, maybe look like they had disease, because I don't want to put those in the ground. I want big, strong, healthy bulbs because I'm selectively breeding garlic that is going to do well in my area. So the ones that got big are the ones that are going to go back in the ground. Now, when spacing out my garlic, I want it to be 6 inches apart within the row. That's going to ensure enough space that that bulb has room to really expand and grow. And then my rows should be separated by about a foot. Because I have a 2.5 foot wide bed, what I'm going to be doing is kind of staggering them. So within the row, they'll be 6 inches apart. And then I'm going to have a middle row that's going to be offset between the two. And to make it somewhat easy on myself, I made this little goofy jig or template. So it is 6 inches wide. So a garlic will go there, a garlic will go there on either corner. And then I'll plop one in the hole. And I'm making my holes with this little dibbler that'll go right in there. But you don't have to, have this, something like this. You can use a stick, you can use your fingers, a little spade. Now, when planting your garlic, you want 2 to 3 inches above the tip of where the garlic is. And once you have your hole made, drop your garlic bulb down in there, and you want it to be with the pointy side sticking up. That's the side that's going to sprout. Your roots are going to come out the bottom, so you want it facing the right direction. And once your garlic is planted, you should add a layer of mulch on top of it. For mulching, I use straw, just this packaged straw that I got from the hardware store, but you could use bales of straw that would probably be way cheaper. You can also use shredded leaves or grass, just something to put on top of about a 4-inch layer to help insulate during the winter to actually prevent frost heave. Because if the ground is allowed to freeze and thaw, it can actually force those little bulbs out. And then once your garlic bed is mulched, you really just wait until spring. Once the weather starts to warm up, I remove some of my mulch, but I leave a layer to help with that weed suppression. And then once I see them start to emerge and they're 2 to 3 inches tall, I start fertilizing with a nitrogen-rich fertilizer. Something like feather meal, blood meal, a fish emulsion, and I do that every 3 to 4 weeks. And that nitrogen is going to help put on a lot of good green top growth. That green top growth, that's the solar panel of the plant. It's going to be collecting that energy and moving that energy down into the bulb. And for me, in my area, about mid-May, I stop fertilizing because I no longer want top green growth. I want all that energy going down into the bulb. So I stop fertilizing. I don't really have to worry about watering for me here in Kentucky, but I want to make sure that it stays consistently moist. So if you do have periods, dry spells, you may need to irrigate, and you may have an issue where you have too much water. That's why site selection is very important at the beginning when you started your bed. Another thing to think about throughout the growing season would be your pests and diseases. How can you prevent those? You could have white rot, which is the worst disease possible for garlic. That's why I caution against buying grocery store garlic and not seed garlic from a trusted source, because you could be introducing a pathogen into your soil that can persist for decades. White rot sounds like what it sounds like. It's a rot that happens from a fungal infection in the ground. Your bulbs rot. Another thing, you can have they're called onion flies or wire worms. It's a maggot that gets in the bulb. I had some this year, but it only impacted maybe 1 to 2% of my garlic, so not enough to be concerned. To help with that, ensure that you're rotating your beds of garlic every year. If they're a problem in your area, you can cover them so those flies can't get to the garlic to prevent that. So that's another thing to look out for. And then rust can be an issue. Rust is a fungal issue that happens on the leaves. It looks like brownishy orange, like rust. That is because of high humidity. So you can help mitigate that by spacing out your garlic well enough when you're planting it. I could probably get away with, 4 inches or 6 inches in every direction and cram a whole lot more garlic in, but I'm not going to have good airflow. So that's why you want to have that foot distance between your rows to provide good airflow so you don't have humidity issues and fungal issues. The last problem you could potentially have are nematodes, little soil organisms that can attack your garlic. Rotating every single year helps them not build up too high. And then if they are a problem, you can solarize the area by putting down a clear plastic tarp. The sun heats up, creates a greenhouse effect, and bakes those little critters to remove them. And now, when do you harvest your garlic? Well, if you grew hardneck garlic, you're actually going to have a mini harvest before your garlic bulbs are ready, because that garlic is going to put on a scape. The scape would be turned into a flower, and you want to remove that so you're not putting energy into that flower and creating seed. You want all that energy going into the bulb. So once that scape emerges and curls over, you can clip that off. I like to saute them like you would green beans, and they taste like a delicious garlicky green bean. And then eventually your bulbs are going to be ready. You want to see 50 to 70% sort of dieback or browning of the leaves, and that's when you'll know that they're ready. You can always pull one to see the bulb development if you think that they're ready. You don't want to do it too early because your bulbs are going to be undersized, and if you wait too late, they're going to be too big and it could cause breaking of the paper and poor storage quality of your garlic. Once they've hit that sweet spot, you can start to harvest. My beds are nice and loose and friable, the soil, so I can usually just pull them out. If you have a little bit more compaction, you want to take a digging fork, start away from the garlic, to loosen up that soil to help them remove them. Because sometimes you can yank and the stalk will break off and your garlic bulb will be stuck in the ground. That's no good. Then you've harvested all your garlic. Now what do? Well, first you need to cure your garlic. Curing helps ensure that it has dried a little bit, that the paper has solidified, so it's going to store better. And let me go show you my garlic curing setup so you can see how I do it. So here is my garlic curing setup. I have a very large pallet which I've covered in chicken wire. That allows airflow all around the garlic. I lay it out in one single layer. I have a big box fan that I have running over it, and I just let it sit out in this building for 2 to 4 weeks. You want good airflow, you want it to be in the shade and relatively cool. This is about as cool as it's gonna be for, July in Kentucky. And you could do a few different ways. Some people hang it up sort of vertically, hang it up in rafters and loose bundles, anything to just allow airflow for it to dry out. And then once it started to dry out and is all nice and brown, then you can start cleaning it up to store for long-term storage. I clean them up by removing the roots, cutting that off, cut the tops off of my hard garlic, my stiff neck garlic, and then for my soft neck garlics, we can braid those or also cut the greens off, the dried greens, and store them. For storing, you want them to be in a humidity of 50 to 60%, on the cooler side in the 60 degrees, and they're going to store depending on the type of garlic. Some garlic stores way better, the soft neck garlic, some not so great. You can have hard neck garlics that are only going to last about 3 months. That's why I grow both hardneck and softneck garlic, to ensure that I've got garlic a full year until I'm ready to harvest again. But there are other ways that you can preserve your harvest as well. You can dehydrate garlic and then just use it as those little garlic chips to add to things. You can then blend those up to create a garlic powder or garlic granules. You can freeze whole garlic cloves. You can mince it and freeze it. But one thing you don't want to do, which is something that I've actually done in the past, is freezing it with olive oil. Because then when that goes to sit out, you can create a perfect environment for botulism. So don't do that. I found this on a website online, so you can't always trust everything online. It's kind of ironic for someone telling you that in a YouTube video, and it was perfectly safe. I've since then learned I know better, so I'm going to do better, and I'm relaying that information to you. So storing garlic in olive oil, not necessarily safe. So there are other safe methods to do it, but I like to just depend on hopefully having enough garlic, both hard and soft neck varieties, to get me through the entire year. And also, you want to keep some to hopefully plant again, for your garlic harvest. You're going to take the best bulbs, your biggest, most beautiful bulbs, and those are going to be your seed garlic for the following year. I like to store mine in either a mesh bag or a paper bag in the same conditions that you would normally store garlic in for, preservation for eating. And then eventually it'll come time to start the whole process over again. Let me know what I didn't share. If you know a garlic tip or trick, please tell me, leave it in a comment down below. I have shared everything I know that I've researched about growing garlic. I want this to be the ultimate garlic growing guide. Hopefully you found this video very helpful. My name is Tyler Lloyd, and I wish you the very best. See you later. Bye.